Think about the last time you were standing in a bustling, crowded room. Your eyes were almost certainly drawn straight to the loudest person present, the one cracking jokes at full volume, wildly waving their hands, and desperately demanding to be the center of the universe. We have all been conditioned to believe that noise equals power, and that aggressive behavior equals a dangerous threat. But if you pay close attention to human psychology, you quickly realize we are looking in the completely wrong direction. The real danger never comes from the person standing on a chair and shouting. It comes from the quietest individual sitting silently in the far corner. This is the exact person who has been pushed way past their absolute breaking point, yet has not uttered a single word of complaint. This is the misunderstood empath. Most ordinary people look at a deeply empathetic person and see an incredibly soft, easy target. They see someone they can easily manipulate, emotionally drain, or walk all over because they seem so open, gentle, and accommodating. Making that assumption is a total and fatal mistake. Silence is never a sign of weak submission. Instead, it is a sign of immense, highly concentrated internal containment. They are not exploding into a rage because they possess the deep internal strength required to hold that immense pressure inside. But absolutely everyone has a breaking point. Stay with me, because what happens next changes everything you think you know about human nature. When that quiet person finally decides they have had more than enough, the massive threat they pose is not physical at all. It is a terrifying psychological reckoning that can completely dismantle a manipulator's carefully constructed world in a matter of seconds. To truly comprehend why a fed-up empath becomes so unbelievably dangerous, you must first understand the public mask and the hidden shadow within us all. The mask is the curated public face we all wear to smoothly fit into modern society. For the deeply caring individual, that public mask is almost always built out of endless kindness, patient understanding, and extreme tolerance. They intentionally show the surrounding world a soft face that constantly says, "I understand your pain, and I am here to help you." But the larger and brighter that polite public mask is, the darker, sharper, and more powerful the hidden internal shadow becomes. The shadow is like a heavy lockbox where we store away our suppressed rage, our strict personal boundaries, and our underlying capacity for cold, unyielding truth. Because caring individuals spend so much of their daily lives absorbing the heavy emotions of everyone around them, while constantly playing the peacemaker, they end up developing an internal shadow that is unbelievably sophisticated, sharp, and intense. While a toxic manipulator is busy trying to play clever psychological games with them, the quiet observer is unconsciously cataloging every single one of your personal inconsistencies, subtle shifts in tone, and blatant lies. They are definitely not being naive or foolish. They are operating from a very rare high-level mental state where a person can hold two completely contradictory realities at the exact same moment. They can clearly see that you are a total liar, yet still choose to treat you with genuine warmth. They can actively feel your malice, yet still hope you might grow into a better human being. This dynamic is not a sign of weakness. It represents a massive psychological tension that they choose to carry quietly within themselves every single day. However, the moment an arrogant manipulator pushes things just a fraction too far, that tightly held internal tension instantly snaps like a steel wire. When a quiet observer finally embraces their hidden shadow, they completely stop using their soft, feeling side to protect your delicate ego. Instead, they immediately start using their sharp, penetrating vision to expose your deepest deceits. They transition overnight from the gentle soul who deeply understood your hidden pain to an absolute strategist who sees through your entire public performance with precise, surgical accuracy. Pay very close attention right here, because this exact moment is where the dynamic flips upside down forever. They do not ever need to scream, throw a dramatic fit, or physically fight you, because they already know precisely where your psychological defense armor is paper thin. The most absolute terrifying thing a fake manipulator or narcissist can ever face is a quiet person who has suddenly completely stopped caring about being nice. Once that polite public mask is dropped to the floor, you are no longer dealing with a helpless victim. You are dealing directly with someone who has fully confronted their own inner darkness and now possesses the quiet authority to reflect all of your own hidden filth right back at you until you literally cannot stand the sight of yourself. They become a silent, unstoppable threat because their true power does not come from loud external force, but from an absolute, unshakable internal clarity that can simply no longer be manipulated, twisted, or controlled by anyone. The single biggest mistake any arrogant manipulator makes is blindly assuming that a kind person's gentle nature is merely the sad result of low self-esteem or a complete lack of personal options. They look closely at someone who is remarkably patient, forgiving, and deeply emotional, and they quickly arrive at a foolish conclusion. This person is soft, vulnerable, and weak, so I can easily use them to get whatever I want. In the dark, transactional world of a narcissist, absolutely every human interaction is reduced to a relentless power struggle. Because of this twisted mindset, they mistakenly view genuine human compassion as a massive, fatal flaw in someone's emotional armor. They look at the deeply caring individual as nothing more than a bottomless, free well of positive energy that they can constantly tap into without ever facing any negative consequences. But here lies their most catastrophic and irreversible miscalculation. They completely fail to realize that the soft, gentle exterior of a true empath is actually built directly upon a thick structural foundation of reinforced steel. People who naturally lead with their hearts and prioritize deep emotional connection often possess the most remarkably resilient psychological structures in human existence. Why is that? Because they have spent their entire lives constantly navigating a cold, brutal, and indifferent world while somehow keeping their rich inner sensitivity completely intact. They have not survived all those harsh life lessons by becoming cold and hard like stone. They have survived by developing an internal mind that is incredibly complex, adaptive, and utterly durable. When an arrogant user attempts to break a gentle soul, they are not hitting a fragile, delicate glass ornament that shatters into pieces. They are slamming directly into an advanced, high-tech shock absorber that has been perfectly tempered through endless years of heavy emotional labor and quiet reflection. The manipulator stupidly believes they are playing a simple, casual game of checkers, but the quiet observer has actually been playing grandmaster-level chess the entire time without even realizing it. While the shallow liar is busy spinning intricate webs of deceit and desperately performing for cheap external attention, The quiet individual is subconsciously executing a deeply thorough emotional audit. They do not just feel your physical presence in a room. They are actively decoding every single one of your micro expressions, analyzing your subtle changes in vocal tone, and measuring the massive, glaring gaps between what you promise out loud and what you actually do in real life. This is not simple guesswork or random emotion. It is an extremely advanced form of human pattern recognition. For the observant empath, every clever lie you tell, every gaslighting comment you make, and every subtle act of emotional cruelty is never truly forgotten or overlooked. Instead, every single toxic detail is systematically organized and stored away as raw psychological data deep within their subconscious mind. They might remain calm in a bad situation for a long time, leading a fool to believe they have won the game. But in reality, that quiet mind is silently cataloging undisputed evidence. They are systematically constructing a massive internal database of your absolute true nature. This exact junction is where the situation transforms into something truly dangerous for any manipulative individual. When that rich internal database of bad behavior finally hits critical mass, a sudden, massive psychological rebirth instantly occurs inside the empath's mind. Up until this exact moment, they have been spending endless amounts of their precious personal energy trying to understand, forgive, and heal the person causing them harm. But once the weight of continuous betrayal grows too heavy, and the overwhelming mountain of collected data proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the manipulator is a completely lost cause, that giant pool of emotional energy is instantly withdrawn. It is pulled back in a single second and totally redirected inward. If you are enjoying these deep psychological insights so far, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe right now so you never miss a video. The overwhelming pain of ultimate betrayal acts like a sudden chemical catalyst, sparking an internal transformation that instantly turns their rich sensitivity into a razor-sharp weapon of absolute clarity. They completely stop feeling empathy for you, and they instantly start seeing right through your games. The shocked manipulator wakes up one morning to discover that the vulnerable target they thought they owned is completely gone. In their place stands an individual who is eerily calm, analytically sharp, and totally immune to every single one of their old tricks and guilt trips. The empath has not merely walked away from the dynamic, they have undergone a complete inner evolution. They have fully integrated their hidden shadow, claimed their rightful boundary anger, and forged their past wounds into a sharp wisdom that a liar simply cannot process. To fully grasp why a pushed observer is so incredibly lethal to a manipulator's ego, you have to understand the fundamental psychological rule that eventually every single thing in nature turns into its complete opposite. Think of a heavy clock pendulum swinging wide in the air. The further it is forcefully pushed in one direction, the more raw physics momentum it gathers to eventually swing back with equal violent force toward the opposite side. This exact physical law takes place within the mind of a gentle soul who has been exploited for far too long. For many long years, they may have acted as the ultimate giver, remaining endlessly patient, constantly forgiving every mistake, and always putting everyone else's emotional needs way ahead of their own well-being. They swung so unbelievably far into the bright light of self-sacrifice that they totally ignored their own basic human needs for safety and respect. But nature dictates that such an unbalanced, extreme state can never last forever. When the intense pressure of constant betrayal finally reaches its absolute breaking point, the swinging pendulum does not simply freeze in place. It violently swings back to the opposite side with terrifying speed and unstoppable momentum. This moment is known as the Great Internal Flip. It is the exact second when the most flexible, accommodating person you have ever known suddenly transforms into an unmovable, solid brick wall. This instant transformation is usually deeply shocking to everyone around them, especially to toxic manipulators who have grown accustomed to taking advantage of the empath's endless softness. Suddenly, the very person who used to desperately beg for a simple explanation meets every trick with total, icy silence. The gentle individual who used to grant endless second chances now grants absolutely none. But it is vital to understand that this dramatic shift is not about the person turning evil, vengeful, or cruel. It is actually the ultimate sign of profound psychological health and total shadow integration. Throughout their life, the empathetic individual likely suppressed their dark boundaries. They hid away the exact parts of themselves that knew how to say a firm no, the parts that held justified anger, and the parts that fiercely demanded respect, because they foolishly viewed those strong traits as mean or wrong. But during this great internal flip, they finally stop running away from their inner shadow and start actively using it as a protective shield. They are definitely not losing their good heart. They are simply armoring it against dynamic parasites. They are finding their true backbone by accepting that being a fundamentally good human being does not mean allowing yourself to be used as a carpet. They finally realize that true kindness requires having the raw personal power to be extremely dangerous whenever it becomes necessary to protect your soul. The most magnificent part of this complete internal shift is that the transformed individual totally stops being reactive and starts being deeply strategic. When you live in a constant state of emotional reactivity, you are being directly controlled by the person who is actively hurting you. You cry out in frustration, you scream in anger, you endlessly defend your reputation, and by doing all of that, you are giving the manipulator the exact emotional attention and supply they crave. But an individual who has completed the great flip has already fought and won the ultimate battle inside their own mind. They have directly confronted the darkest corners of their own personal pain and emerged completely whole on the other side. Because they are no longer desperately seeking your validation, fighting for your approval, or begging for your understanding, you instantly lose every single bit of leverage you ever held over them. They do not need to destroy your reputation, scream at you, or actively seek bitter revenge, because they have reached a state of complete psychological sovereignty where your opinion carries zero weight. They have fully reclaimed their vital life force and permanently redirected it toward building their own brilliant future. This is the ultimate victory of human development, the exact moment a person becomes so internally complete that the stupid mind games of toxic individuals simply cease to function entirely. The great flip is not just the bitter end of a bad relationship. It is the magnificent birth of an utterly unstoppable human being. The absolute most terrifying moment for any arrogant manipulator is the exact second they realize their soft target has completely stopped reacting to them. To understand why this quiet shift carries such massive power, you must look closely at how power dynamics actually operate in real life. Most ordinary people are hopelessly hooked into toxic relationships through their unhealed emotional wounds. They exist in a state of high reactivity, meaning their daily emotions are entirely dictated by what someone else says, thinks, or does. If a narcissist ignores them, they frantically chase after them. If a narcissist screams at them, they get defensive and cry. But a transformed empath has achieved absolute psychological autonomy. This means they have officially taken back the master keys to their own emotional house. They have done the hard, painful inner work of healing their core insecurities, processing their past trauma, and establishing their true self-worth. Because they are now entirely whole within themselves, they no longer need the cheap external validation or chaotic emotional hits that the manipulator used to supply. They effectively stop playing the game altogether, because every psychological game requires two active players who care about the final outcome, and the empath has permanently checked out. The most powerful position you can ever possibly hold in any human dynamic is total emotional detachment, born from absolute understanding. This is not the cold, hollow indifference of a bitter person who is merely bored or acting childish. It is the razor-sharp, crystal-clear detachment of a master strategist who finally sees the entire chessboard for what it truly is. When a gentle person reaches this refined level of awareness, they do not retreat into the background because they are feeling hurt, confused, or scared. Those are weak, reactive emotions that a manipulator can easily exploit to drag them right back into the mud. Instead, the transformed observer calmly steps back because they have attained a surgical clarity. They see every one of the manipulator's desperate tactics, deep-seated insecurities, and predictable behavioral patterns as if they were watching a boring movie they have already seen 1,000 times before. This complete detachment acts like an invisible, impenetrable force field around their soul. You can simply no longer gaslight a person who completely trusts their own eyes and memories. And you can never again emotionally hurt someone who has fully accepted the unvarnished, cold truth of exactly who and what you are. This precise clarity unlocks the most devastating force in a transformed empath's arsenal, the quiet mirror of absolute reality. Deception, lies, and emotional manipulation can only ever survive inside a dense fog of confusion, self-doubt, guilt, and endless excuses. The serial manipulator relies heavily on the kind person to help them maintain their fragile, fake public image. But a detached, fully awakened observer permanently stops holding up that pretty, flattering mirror. Instead, they start reflecting back nothing but the icy, undeniable facts of reality. They do not do this by engaging in screaming matches, throwing dramatic fits, or launching personal attacks. They do it with calm, unwavering, and undisputed truths. When the caught manipulator desperately tries to twist the story, the calm observer simply reflects reality straight back into their face. I clearly saw what you did. I heard the exact words you said. And I am permanently done participating in your foolish lie. By absolute refusal to feed the drama or validate the nonsense, the calm individual forces the manipulator to stand completely alone with their own inner rot and mental dysfunction. There is nothing in this world more deeply terrifying to a person living a complete lie than being forced to stare directly into the mirror of truth without any loud distractions. The empath's quiet detachment is the ultimate weapon, because it does not just win the argument, it renders the entire fight totally impossible to continue. When a gentle individual has been quietly suppressed, systematically gaslit, or repeatedly pushed to the ultimate edge for way too long, most foolish onlookers expect them to eventually break down completely into a state of chaotic emotional devastation. They naively expect a messy public breakdown or a pathetic, desperate plea for help. But the exact opposite occurs when a strong mind reaches its absolute limit. Instead of a chaotic storm of confusion, there is a sudden, breathtaking arrival of absolute, undeniable clarity. This is the exact moment the heavy fog lifts completely from their mind forever.